Hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Rogers. I have a practice in Boise in Ontario, Oregon, and I'm here today with JOYLYN Maniaci. JOYLYN is a relationship coach. She has the Happiness Clinic in Boise, and she helps coach relationships or with themselves. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I do relationship coaching. That's what I say, but it's always the relationship with yourself that's the one that determines all the others. So that's what we end up working on most of the time, which is why I can do couples coaching with just one person.
That is awesome. And you are actually a naturopathic doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, I graduated from Bastyr University and man, that was fun. I call that time of my life I was in Candyland because we were on St. Edward State Park in Seattle. So there was amazing trails to run on and just being around awesome people and learning about stuff. It was a magical time. But I sort of discovered that I really liked the personal side of medicine. I could totally nerd out with all the testing and the letters and initials and things, acronyms, and I like that, but I just have such an interest and a fine-tuned ability to hear what people aren't saying and to kind of, read between the lines. And and it was like that's the people that came to me, diabetes, cardiovascular problems, and I would be talking about the sweetness in their life and what they were doing for themselves, or with the cardiovascular, where was the broken heart. And that's just how it sort of came through me. I had a supervisor who says sometimes you just don't get to pick how the medicine comes through you. And
Mhm.
I forget what he said. Oh, he wanted so bad to go into Ayurvedic medicine, but he was just good at injections. So then he'd just inject in a pattern of a mandala. But he's like, the medicine chooses you. And so mine is the gift of gab and tuning into feelings.
Right. And when I first met you, you talked about helping people find joy.
Yeah, and you know what I find so interesting? That's one of the first conversations that I'll have with clients, because that's what that's how you know you're being you, is when you like yourself, when you're lit up from the inside and you're just authentically happy and there's a bubbly feeling. And that's where we need to go when things get hard or when we feel like we're losing connection with ourselves, is what brings you joy. And what's funny, not funny, is that a lot of people, that's the conversation they want to weasel out of. And we'll talk about their joy and they'll talk about how their husband's a pain in the ass and what he needs to change. And I'll be like, bring it back, where's your joy? Because yeah, but that's what I love to do. I mean, that's the name I grew up with, was Joy, but I'm JOYLYN. And I just, more happy, laughing people is confident people, happy people. They're just easier to deal with on a day to day. So if it's just selfishly driven. I just want to deal with easier people. But yeah, I just would like more joy on the planet, I guess.
And you are a coach, not a counselor. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So having gone through a lot of counseling and counseling training, so my own personal journey and then my professional experience, what I see the biggest difference in, and why I chose to go with the coaching was where I actually experienced the greatest shift in the biggest movements, and it actually lasted, was because with coaching, the priority is on the future. What is it that you would like to have? What do you want to create is your life? And it's looking at the future, and so that you're not defined or limited by your past. And I see that counseling a lot of times, and it though it is very helpful, can sometimes put an overemphasis on the past and a priority on the understanding of it, thinking that if you understand it, then everything will open up. But the understanding isn't actually necessary. Another choice is available at any time, and we actually have the power to say, that was then, this is now. That's what I used to do, but this is what I'm going to do now, just because that would light me up. That's what would bring me more joy. And I just see it to be faster and less limiting, and the changes last longer.
Hmm. So, who do you primarily see? Who is your target audience?
Primarily I work with empathic women. They don't necessarily always say, hey, I'm an empath, but very quickly into it, we discover it's women who are highly sensitive and very self aware, so that they know that they're picking up on other people's feelings. They're very attuned to other people's feelings and being able to read situations and people very easily. What's interesting about that subset is I also like to call them unassuming badasses, because most people wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I rock this world. But in truth, they do. And they're the emerging leaders that the world is actually crying for right now. Because the empathic abilities that they have means that they just have an innate capability to hold other people in their frame of reference and include all people in their choices. Now, where the life and relationship tend to go south is all of their early childhood training has been them building a life around someone else and actually needing to attune to someone else's emotional states for survival, or to fit in your family, or to just keep the peace. And but continuing that into adulthood, it's not working because they just feel diminished in their life. So it's learning how to become a reference point for your own life, stop looking outside of yourself for validation, and actually trusting the gift that you have, that as a leader, just because you get included with the choice doesn't mean nobody else is getting excluded. Right now, who gets excluded is themselves. So it's just learning how to include them and and bring everyone forward, including themselves. So that's who I tend to work with most. However, I actually do now have a client who's the husband of someone who went through the program. So I'm kind of excited because there are empathic men as well. This isn't a gender gift. It's just that a lot of women are like, yep, I'm ready to go. And I say, I will be happy to work with you.
So what does a session with you look like?
It can be all across the board. The sessions are 45 minutes and it is conversation, but what that conversation includes depends on where the person is and what they're working on. So sometimes it's just they'll tell me about a situation and we can actually rehearse, and because nobody likes role playing, but it really is effective because the brain can't tell real from imagined. So we'll actually role play the situation so they actually get a practice of what it feels like to be calm in a charged conversation, to come up with a different way of behaving that isn't what they've always done, so that they can actually redirect things from how they are. Sometimes we do have to go back to the past because that's what's holding us up from going to the future. So it's getting in touch with the inner child. That's where the trauma is. And a lot of times when we look at how we behave in charged situations, we'll be like, yeah, that's about what a 6 or 7-year-old kid would do, throw things, storm out of a room, whatever. So we go to that little kid, connect with ourselves, and integrate and actually heal. Sometimes I'm the one that's got to be like, oh my goodness, did you just see what you did? You just changed the world. You handled that beautifully. And if nobody else tells you that, I'm going to celebrate that with you. So it's really all across the board what we do, but it's just getting the person to make it more of a habit of, like I say, when the old stuff comes up, the ugly stuff comes up, it's coming up to leave. It's our job to take one more step towards our future, away from that past. And it's just, so I'm just there to constantly get them to keep pivoting, turning, reprioritizing their future, believing in that they have the ability to do it, and building the confidence in doing that.
Yeah, because a lot of times people, we have these neural pathways, and then it's easier to go down the old neural pathways than it is to create a new neural pathway. But you have to work on those new neural pathways in order to get your brain to go down this new thing. Like, don't go down that old path, choose this new path. And always you have to practice that in order to do it. So it sounds like you're doing amazing work. I mean, we all have childhood trauma. I haven't met anybody who hasn't had something that has happened, and some people can process through that and choose different things very easily, and then other people, like you said, especially the ones that are looking out for everybody else except themselves, it's hard to put yourself first, especially women, even though as we've grown as a culture to have women do more and more things that they never done in the past, we still have a culture where women are the caretakers, right? And
Yeah.
so it's hard, and even in my practice, it's like I have to help people remind themselves all the things that they're doing and why they're so stressed. Like they're taking care of children, they're taking care of their homes, they're working, they might be taking care of an aging parent. And under the COVID crisis, that's even more.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
moving people into remembering that they can ask for help from others, that they don't have to do it all, and they can work on themselves. That's pretty amazing. That's a lot of great work.
Totally. And going back to, I always say, if you made it past the age of 5, you've probably got some trauma. And what I like to do is help people bypass the whole blaming stage, because it's easy to blame your parents because they messed up. They totally did. But they taught us what they knew, and they had imperfect processes and systems. So now it's just, hey, let's lay the blame down. And what you'd like to have is actually totally possible and available. And I say I like to work not on stress management, but stress elimination, because there are so many things that it's just like, you know what? You're actually, that's not even something you're interested in. You can set that down. You know, the blame you can set down, the judgment of yourself about how long it's taking where you should be, we can just set that down, you know? And when we start to reprioritize and make that future more important and we start to pay attention, that gets energized and it does become easier and easier to choose it because the brain is, we've got that neuroplasticity going on. So yeah, it's just a matter of repeating that as many times as it takes to make that the habit instead of the self-judgment and the depletion. Yeah.
You're like an empowerment doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It's, and part of it to me is, I mean, I've been called impatient my entire life, and it's just, I'm just fast. And right now I'm just like, I feel like Ricky Bobby on Talladega Nights of just, I like to go fast. I'm just tired of all the slow having to process, feel it, cry it out, write it out. And those steps are absolutely necessary and they will come up, but that's not always like, I would sometimes get lost in the processing. And when I finally realized, oh, there's a faster way, I'm totally going to do that. And to where the crying, the processing, the writing are still tools, still parts of it, but they're still always directed at that future
Mm-hmm.
and getting me more towards that. And what I tell people is the thing that I think that I was like, why didn't somebody explain this to me? This would have made a lot more sense. Is we don't have to dig into the past and make sure everything's all lined up and perfect in order for us to move. And when you decide to prioritize your future, it's not like a bypassing situation where everything's hunky dory, you're not doing it. It's as soon as you turn and direct your gaze and your energy and attention to the future, all the stuff that you are standing on and in, it comes up and it's visible. So you don't have to dig for it, it'll just show up. And I'm like, isn't that the beauty? You're just like, I just thought I was doing something good and taking a step towards my future and trying to improve my health. Why is all this bad stuff showing up? And it's like, it was just showing you what was in the way the whole time, and now it's just for you to continue your walk away from it and say, you know, thank you, goodbye.
Right, exactly. That sounds like a difficult but potentially fun process.
Yeah. And like I tell my husband, he has to now worry about what questions he asks. Yesterday we were in a conversation, he's like, is this conversation going to end? And I was like, oh, I can talk about feelings all day. Like, this is what I love talking about and doing with and for people. So I have fun. So if they're not having fun, I'm having fun. So
So, can you give an example, a simple example of a technique you use to help people?
yeah, so there's so many to choose, but one that I'm really excited about because it all of a sudden came. One of the, you know, things of me is, how do I be me and be a relationship coach? How do I be me and be a doctor? And one of the things that I did, and I never thought of it as a tool, I just, you know, but then I was like, you know what? I think this would help is uh there was one time a love song came on the radio, and I would always be singing it to whatever boyfriend I had at the time, you know? And then one time I actually started singing it to me and I broke down. I was lucky I could drive okay. I had so many tears, you know, mascara all over my face. it was just such a heart opening experience. So what I've decided to put into the program, and I would love to share this tool, is to get a love song, a breakup song, and a goodbye gratitude song, and to sing these to the parts of yourself that need them. The breakup song, like I was telling you, the two middle fingers in the air and I don't care kind of song, that's you being like, hey, habit, goodbye. Where I used to judge myself, where I told myself I couldn't, where I was requiring permission to be alive or waiting for everybody else to be happy before I could, that's out the door. See you, wouldn't want to be you. And that's that song for that. And when you
Mhm.
sing it to the habit, it kind of puts some distance, and it actually gets to see it as something that is not you. We identify with it, but it's not who we really are. So when we can sing to it that way, we kind of recognize that. The love song, to sing to yourself and just be like, wow, what a beautiful being I am. I'm totally worthy of love and I love me. And I'm going to fall in love with me. And how beautiful that in this life I get to be me. And that love song starts to honor you as someone who deserves your own love. And then the goodbye gratitude song is to start to see your life as a work of art, like that it's cumulative and nothing was wasted and it all ended up happening for a reason, even though we couldn't see it at the time. But to start saying like, wow, this is what living is, and there's been highs and lows, and it's just a beautiful richness. And one of the reasons I like singing is because it will change the breath pattern,
Mhm.
and it can also massage the heart. So there's this corporal, like physical inclusion of actually getting some trauma, getting some habits metabolized and out of the body. So I think that would be a something everybody just try it out and see how it works for you.
That sounds like a fun process.
Yeah.
Or it could even be if you're not into singing, although you're talking about that whole somatic response with singing. If somebody doesn't feel like singing, maybe they could like just recite the words or maybe do a poem for each of those categories as well.
Totally, or hum
Yeah,
if you know. But I like cranking it up in the car and then nobody can hear anything.
exactly.
That's been my therapy since I was a teenager.
We
You know,
all sound good singing in the car to ourselves.
like that car
We're all
shower.
really
Yep.
good.
Hmm. Totally. It's just a matter of the right acoustics.
Right, exactly. The acoustics meaning nobody else can hear us.
Exactly, and that's totally fine. And sometimes I'll put in my headphones, and then I'm like, I'm in concert with this person. You know.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you have a really unique practice, and then it sounds like it's all about helping people being empowered and going towards joy and happiness.
Totally. You know, going into personal development and self-help and all of that, for a long time it was, what's the point? I'm still not happy, so what am I doing all this for? And I was like, that's what it's for. It's to actually be happier and enjoy me, because for so much of my life I wished I was somebody else, which is ridiculous because I couldn't possibly be anybody else. And so to now finally actually be living of like, hey, I get to be me.
Right.
That's, most of the times it's fantastic. Sometimes I things were different, but but just to be like, have such gratitude that this is my chance to show up as JOYLYN and to offer what I've got. And I would like more people to recognize that they're unique, and not because of their problems, because that's actually what is common. Abuse, trauma, sadly, those are common experiences here. But the way that you interpret them, the way that you cultivate wisdom from them, and then just things that you're naturally good at, and the things that bring you joy that maybe don't make sense to anybody else, but that you can bring your own spin to the planet. That's what I want to see more of, and have more people engaging and having conversations about, because it's more enlivening, and it will actually improve physical health because it will change our vibration and how our cells are responding.
Right. And when we were talking earlier, you talked about potentially helping support the fascia and the lymph system.
Hmm. Yeah, I just think I've always thought those were the underplayed systems because they're the least understood. But especially having a history of body work, even before I became a naturopathic doctor, physician, and now like, and I loved the craniosacral part of our training. And there was just so much emotional release there to where people would feel better. They would feel different without having to verbally process or intellectually process things, because there is some stuff that's just stored in the body. And there's a lot of times it's just ready to go. It just actually needs to tell its story, and it does that in nonverbal language. So that's why sometimes movement, having a practitioner like be able to listen to the tissue and help, it allows the flow to be reestablished. And I think acupuncture is a big part of that as well, with the
Yeah,
meridian
people,
and the energetic. Yeah.
well, people can have emotional releases with acupuncture, cranial sacral massage, and I experienced one during yoga one day. You know,
Mm.
like I did a stretch in yoga, and all of a sudden I started crying, and I'm like, oh, well, that's what a release feels like
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
middle of a class.
Yep. I had a class like that one time. Every time we went into downward dog. So every time we did the flow, I'd start crying, and then we'd move into a different pose and I'd be fine, and we'd get back into the downward dog. I start crying. I was like, this is bizarre, but yeah, it comes up when it comes up.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, it's really great that you're able to do this and also have that knowledge as a physician to understand that sort of body, mind, emotion connection. So that is a real gift to be able to do all that work all in one place.
Yeah, and it's nice to know people like you, so that when it does, I know when to tag team, and be like tagging in, tagging out, because the center of gravity of what's calling to be healed will change as the healing journey goes, to where it might be more regarding relationship, confidence, and self-esteem, because your posture will change, how you're breathing and all of that. And then it will move into, like, we actually need glandular support because there's some toxicity here that actually has to get taken out of the body, or whatever it is. So
Mhm.
yeah, all of
Was there
it.
anything else you would like to add?
um can't think of anything in particular.
Okay.
I'm just so convinced that there are so many beautiful, amazing badasses that, if I can be any part, in any way, part of them finding their voice and then bringing their gift to the planet, I'll do anything that I can, because that's what I want to see more of.
Well, thank you for talking with me today. And
Yeah, thanks for having me.
looking forward to partnering with you. So this is JOYLYN Maniaci at the Happiness Clinic in Boise. So
Yep.
thank you, JOYLYN.
Thank you.